Leslie and I have known each other since.
Charles, what's happening, my brother?
Brother, it's Friday after oral surgery, so I'm coming around and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, speaking of that oral surgery, man, how was that? You know, I've had plenty of experience with that, but this is your first time, right?
First time in a long time.
Yeah.
First time in a long time.
So look, here's what the people want to know. Just go on and tell me, were you a baby or were you a man?
I'm always a man, sir.
Yeah, whatever. I heard. I'm just saying. I just heard. I got sources say you was up in there crying. I'm just saying. I heard. I just heard.
No, the crying would have been before.
You got that right. All right, man. Here we are. Last week we talked about the Chauvin trial that was still going on. Here we are this week. The verdict has been delivered. We all know what that is. But yet, as we look at the title of the show today, will there ever be reform? Because clearly we have a problem. And we've talked about it. You've heard my passionate arguments and my frustrations. And I'm sure I'm not alone in those frustrations. But the question still looms, because on the very day that we got the verdict, in one case, we were still having incidents happening all over the place. And so it just brings to me the question, will there ever be reform? And I mean, that's really where I am on it, because I'm just seeing this train wreck. It almost feels like Groundhog Day. I think that was Groundhog Day. Is that Groundhog Day where the same thing, you wake up every day and that's how it feels. So
yeah, the
only
difference is Groundhog Day was a comedy. This is people's lives, and while I'm pleased with the verdict, whether or not there will ever be reform is a separate question entirely, because the verdict, and this is what I warned you all about, that verdict is specific to what happened to Mr. George Floyd due to the direct actions of Derek Chauvin. It's not to policing at large. And I told you, I could see a shift, almost an orchestrated shift by the police unions and others in policing to try and jump on the wagon, because they could kind of see where it might be headed, to say, oh, it's just one bad actor. It's not really police departments. And that's orchestrated for this reason. Now Derek Chauvin becomes a scapegoat, and it allows the focus to be moved away from the larger issue of reforming policing. And you have media out there that are jumping up and down saying, well, if we do some of these proposed reforms, then all the police will get sued. We won't have safety. We won't have police departments that function. We won't have that critical service. All of that is bupkis. Why would you be worried about litigation if you don't have any intentions of doing something that requires litigation?
I agree.
And then the other thing that I keep hearing is more training, more training, more training. But I heard something interesting this morning from, I forget her name, but there's a group that has started gathering the data on the trainings. So here's what I heard, and here's some of the things that it made me ponder.
Okay.
I heard that yes, they're getting training as new recruits. They're getting training as seasoned officers. So that means you're getting training when you first come in, and you're getting training also annually for continuing education. However, nobody is tracking whether or not that training is effective. What if there is a fatal flaw in the way the training is done because it's being presented by law enforcement only? If you don't get any other community stakeholders in the room, is that training really effective in how to deal with the community of color?
You know, you know where I stand on this whole training thing. I think that in itself is a scapegoat. Now,
I think it's overplayed because it's something that you can point to and say, well, training. But we know from this case, Mr. Chauvin had many, many hours, hundreds of hours of training. And yet he managed to do it all wrong.
all right, let me put this. Let me just go layman here. So you at one point you were an athlete, correct?
Yes.
You've had many years, many hours, countless hours of instruction and training and coaching, and even specialized instruction and training and coaching. And you've seen others and been on a team with others that had that same amount of coaching, training, and instruction. And yet, in the game, have you seen a failure to implement that training, that very training that you've had so much of?
Oh, without a doubt.
Okay.
Training only gets you so far. I mean, you won't get any argument from me on that. Training only gets you so far. I think there needs to be a reimagining of that training to make sure that, first of all, the training is relevant to policing today. Because you have an intersect that I have been tracking, and I've talked to you about this before, the militarization of policing.
Yes.
It's two different modes of operating. Military operates in a totally different manner than police should.
And they should. It's two totally different focuses.
Yeah, but if you don't drill down into that, then you get a firsthand seat at seeing what training prevails. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with military training for the purpose it is intended for. But when that carries over into policing, that causes huge problems because the mission is different. And it's critical that you get the mission right, because as you can see from the young lady who called the police, 16-year-old who called the police on yesterday, she called the police because she was feeling threatened.
Well, and that's my point.
Police get on the scene 30 seconds later, she's shot and killed. So we have to re-examine and reimagine everything about policing.
Well, I'm still going to hold true that I think until we deal with the culture aspect, we won't get very far. We'll get as far as training can take us, which is where we are right now.
Well,
when we at a point where you say it again.
I said, I think that's a part of it. I'm saying we need to reimagine everything. You're not going to get any argument from me
I got you.
on whether we need to examine the culture. We need to examine everything about it, from command structure to mission to training to vetting process of new hires, the vetting process of existing hires.
That's fair. So you're saying we need to take a comprehensive approach to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I don't think one thing will cure this.
Fair enough. So Charles, I'm just go on. I'm really here's where I am on this, right? So we're not even, I forget how far the town is where Kim Potter police is. It's just a suburb of Minneapolis, from my understanding.
About 20 miles from the courthouse.
So in the same, here's where this is where it really concerns me. So when you're in the same physical location, probably one of the in recent years one of the biggest cases that has really skyrocketed and capitalized on national attention and global attention for that matter. And even as close as you are to that, even in the midst of the trial, that you still can make mistakes that indicate a failure of organizational culture, it baffles me. It baffles me. Here's what I'm saying. It's like I touch the stove, I tell you it's hot. You come behind me and touch it anyway.
Yes. But I think you're missing something in that analysis. So I'm going to attempt to interject this. And this is not to offend you, but having gone out on police calls, most things are heightened in that situation. And that's not to give her a pass, because I don't think a pass is deserved in that situation. But what I'm saying is, even with all the media, even with the gravity of what's about to happen in the courtroom 20 miles away, the intensity of the moment is what we have to focus on. See, the difference between the Chauvin trial and the rest of these cases, and why I feel like the verdict came down the way it did, is that you had 9 minutes and 30 seconds of video.
Yeah. Okay, Charlie.
A lot of these are bang bang.
That's true.
And so it's a different calculus that goes in, especially when a lot of people want to give the police the benefit of the doubt because they're taking care of the safety of our community.
Here's somebody just recently had, I did this test to myself when this happened. Do you know how much time, literally, if you sit there and count for 9 minutes and 30 seconds, do you understand the magnitude? Here it is. Let me put it to you this way. Think of the most painful exercise you can do, the one you like the least, right? You got to do that for 9 minutes and 30 and hold it. So whether it's 6 inches, which I used to hate 6 inches when we used to do that coming up, 9 minutes is a long time. And that's a long time for you to evaluate, process, rethink, execute, reevaluate, reprocess, re-execute, redeploy, reassess. And here's the other issue. You're not alone. There are several other officers around you, and yet this still happens. So that's when you talk about it's a comprehensive need that needs to happen, you're right, because the system comprehensively failed. So not only did Mr. Chauvin not do the right thing, even in having a chance to reprocess and reevaluate for 9 minutes and 30 seconds, so did those other officers for 9 minutes and 30 seconds, and nobody got it right.
Well, that's not entirely true, Liz. That's not entirely true. The outcome was wrong. But there were at least 2 officers who asked Mr. Chauvin exactly what you're supposed to ask. Now that you have control of the suspect, do you want to roll him over? Do you want to sit him up? Mr. Chauvin chose not to, and that's where those heightened charges come in. And then the other thing that you have to consider is this: factually, it will be hard for and I'm not giving anybody a pass because I think the whole thing stinks. But who's the supervisor in that situation? Chauvin.
Okay.
That makes a huge difference. Even though those officers deferred to him, they weren't necessarily going to overrule him, because now you're talking about dollars and cents to their families.
Now, and that's where I say we have an organizational culture problem, because the way that the chain of command, the way the organizational culture is currently set, they don't have an avenue to override him at the moment to prevent a catastrophic mistake from happening.
They do, but they chose not to. They do.
Do they really?
Yes,
you and I both
do.
know it's one thing to have it on paper, it's one thing for it to actually be executable. We talk about this all the time. I can put a law on paper that sounds good, it appeases the crowd, but actually I didn't put the things in the law that's going to allow it to be implemented or enforced.
Yeah, it's there. It's there. I wouldn't go that far. It's there. It's actually there. It's there in criminal law, in constitutional law, military law. If someone is giving you an order that breaks the law, you're no longer bound by that order. Now, whether they choose to be bound.
So if that's the case, it brings me back to the same point. Why do we fail? Not one person, not two people, not three, but four. So why did we fail?
Well, they will have their day in court to answer that question.
And then why are we failing in the same proximity during the midst of this trial again? Multiple officers around, not just one. Why are we? I don't know. I hear you, and it's the scholarly thing to say that you're saying. I'm gonna push back against that because it's not good enough. It's not good enough that we.
Well, loss of life is not good enough, but I think that's where the focus should be. How do we get Black people who are stopped by the police home after the stop? That's the larger question, and that's why I say we need a comprehensive look, because it's got to be more than one thing. At this point,
I can agree with that.
At this point, I'm convinced it's more than one root cause as to why these things are happening.
Well, all right. Nancy Pelosi said in her speech, she said that George Floyd sacrificed his body for this change, and she went on to say how that's very insensitive to the Black community at large.
No, that's not what she said.
Similar. Now, if I paraphrase
paraphrase that wrong.
All right.
Basically, get it right for me. Basically, what she was doing was thanking Mr. Floyd for dying so that we could have this moment. Bad move, Nancy.
I got you. So what we were saying, listen, that's on me. It was insensitive how it came out and how it's
received. Yes.
Is what I was trying to get at. And so when you say the statement, nobody should have to sacrifice their life in that way. And that's why I call back and say it's simply not good enough to say more training, because we've been saying more training for a long time. It's not good enough to say, oh yeah, we got a problem, but the problem is really isolated into this one particular group or this one particular our new hires are the people coming in. No, I don't buy that either.
Well, here's what I will tell you, and I'm going to bring it back here every time.
Yep.
The change that you seek is in the ballot box, because if you look right now, the George Floyd Policing Act is sitting up there, passed in the House, and now the Senate is talking about they want to work on bipartisan basis to get a bill out. Well, specifically, what they are frustrated and angry about is that George Floyd policing bill would take away qualified immunity and start collecting data and start a database to put in officers who have excessive force complaints so that they can't work anywhere. Those are the type of reforms that will at least get us out of the gate. But they focus on the qualified immunity.
I agree with Marla in the fact that it may be written, it may be policy, and as you stated, it's in there.
So when I'm giving
it don't do it any good to be in there if it's not enforceable. If it's not, and I mean practically enforceable. I don't mean theoretically.
Yes, but what you all are addressing is the culture question, which you've already beat to death. You've already laid out.
Nobody's hearing that. Nobody's hearing that. And none of these solutions you're so-called hearing, nobody's mentioned the culture. It's all about training. It's all about training and only training.
Well, that's why I'm telling you Training is only one part. It has to be comprehensive. You got to look at the whole system.
All right. Well, all right. So let me take you back. Watch it. And I think I know what you're going to say already, but I'm going to ask the question. Who has the responsibility to look at the whole system?
Everybody. In particular, those people who have a voice to vote, those people who have a voice to advocate. If you weigh what Mr. Floyd's brother said, no family should have to say that. You know, like he said, he finally got a good night's sleep. It's a year later from when his brother's life was taken. Nobody should have to go. So it's really important that this is all hands on deck. But this is what brings me back to my larger point about the political climate. Republicans, and I'm calling you out, Republicans, are hiding behind Tim Scott, who is the only Black United States senator that's in the Republican Party. They hide behind him to say that they are going to do some type of reform package. But here's what I'm seeing by their actions. They don't want the reform because they want the status quo of the system. That means they don't have a problem with the Black lives that are being lost. That's a problem for me. And so we, the voters, can do something about that.
Okay.
That's how you get that change. And here's the other thing. We talk about local politics. This is one of the few times when the federal government needs to be in charge of this program. Because if you leave it up to the locals, then you get that same organizational culture that you're talking about that's rotten.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I just, and forgive me, family, I am still highly frustrated with this because I'm sick, and I'm going to pull the words of Fannie Lou Hamer back today, and I am sick and tired of being sick and tired of hearing the word training. I am, because like you said, that's one part, and Lord knows we've done enough training. I sure like to see us do the rest of the things we haven't touched in the last 60 years to really address, to really to deliver change. Change can't happen. I'm almost convinced Merriam-Webster defines insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome.
Indeed.
That's not my definition. That's Merriam-Webster's definition. That's the standard. Right?
Yeah. But that's why you need federal oversight.
I agree. But here's the thing, right? All right, so here we go.
Why you ponder that? The only way you get federal oversight is this. You got to vote them out. And you've got to convince your party, the Democrats. Now I'm looking at you, Democrats. You're talking about you want to be cordial and you want to play the Senate as a place for making deals and consensus. Get rid of the filibuster.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, if Leslie Peters, who is an officer that is white, is wrote up on a complaint for excessive force, and now his name goes into a national database and he can't work, everybody gonna start changing.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, and so it's been a rough week, because I'm happy with the verdict. Let me just be clear on that. I'm happy that I will tell you, and you knew the apprehension I had, because I said, look, man, I'm at a point, because for 9 minutes and 30 seconds, like you said, we've never had that before. It's usually bang, bang. I said, if they come back, and that was my words to you, I said, if they come back and we don't get a verdict after 9 minutes and 30 seconds, I don't know if I can find another ounce of faith in justice. Lady Justice has availed me, because literally for the first time, that was monumental. And it almost was as monumental to advocate change as Rosa Parks deciding, no, not today. But what happened after that, and the reason why they were able to make change is, like you said, they did the things to affect change comprehensively. You can't just say it. What that means is we ain't gonna ride the bus. So everybody has to come together. There has to be a systematic approach to it to drive change. And so you're right on that. It's you got to hit them in the pain points where it's going to drive change. If it's not painful to me, I have no incentive to change.
And that's why I say get rid of the filibuster and you see some things done. But see, they're trying to use this for political points. Right now, they're trying to use this. They're using the verdict to fundraise.
Well, know how I feel. Family, chime in. This is not just Leslie and Charles show today. I want to hear your thoughts. You guys know, you know where I am on this. Definitely want to hear you chime in. Charles, I almost forgot. I've been spoiled because we got a lovely intern that does all the behind the scenes stuff now, and I just get to sit and ponder my thoughts for once. But I don't know. We have to get her in here to get her thoughts on this too, because this is interesting. The verdict is, we all had a chance to react to the verdict, and as you can see, even with you and me, we react differently. We got different. I mean, you're able to kind of look at it a little bit more objectively. I'm looking at it as I used to be able to look at it objectively. Now I'm just downright, let's do something about it.
Oh, I'm in that same boat. I think it's just the expressions may be a little bit hotter on your end. That's all. I'm in the same boat.
Kennedy,
what say you? What's your opinion of the verdict and the overall issue of reform in policing?
I think the verdict, when it first happened, when I first heard about it, I honestly did shed a tear when I first heard the verdict and all three of it. Well, he was guilty on all three counts. It was just, I was happy, but it was like I kind of got that joy stripped away from me once I heard literally hours afterwards how Ma'Khia Bryant just was shot and killed. And so it's just kind of like, it's discouraging me being a student who wants to work for like federal government and stuff like that and be a district attorney, because, in order to see change, you got to kind of see people like you in these systems to create change. But it's just like, why do I want to work for a system who constantly is just not for me? And so I was happy, but it's just like, that's kind of the reason why I titled the show how it is will there ever be reform? It's like we get some good news, and then right after that, it's like stripped away from us once again. And it's discouraging. It really is.
Yes, but here's what I will say to you, Kennedy, and that is this. Barack Obama once said, be the change you want to see. Long-term change is not going to come if you all don't step into the arena.
I do agree.
And that's not just aimed at you. That's aimed at everybody that can hear me. We all have to step into the arena. And we have to connect the dots, because right now, police reform is being held up as a way to hold on to political power, because they're setting up a culture war for the 2022 midterm. And they're using Mr. Scott as their straw man. Now he's been put up to give the rebuttal to the State of the Union on Wednesday, while he tries to negotiate policing reform. That's a setup. All the while, the talking heads over on Fox and all the rest of these further homegrown networks are railing against qualified immunity being stripped away, railing against databases, railing against budgets being reimagined.
Okay.
That's to create the culture of us against them. Nobody on our side is saying it's us against them. All we want to do is be able to know that policing is happening and it's equal to us just like it is to everybody else.
Exactly.
But you have to watch the frames that are being put on this stuff, because politics matter. Elections matter. And with the 50-50 tie in the Senate and no filibuster reform, then we're not getting the It's the reforms that we need. And I'll go one step further and say that the George Floyd Policing Act does not go as far as it needs to, but it's a good start.
Yeah, I do agree. It is a good start. Hopefully, it will be you'll see actual change. And I think one thing that a lot of people were saying, how like a lot of social media as well, you know, this isn't really justice. This is accountability. And I think a lot of people should see that by the accountability.
Huge difference. This is accountability for Derek Chauvin.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of work that has to be done as far as justice for Black and brown people when it comes to policing.
You know what? It makes me think of a quote from Frederick Douglass that's not often recited. And it goes like this. He says, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. And I think it's also the one that's most misunderstood. But what he was saying is, if you have knowledge to do something, it should cause you to act to make that change. Mm-hmm. And we're at a point where in America, we now cannot deny we have the knowledge. Now we must take action to make the change and make America a better place. And that requires action from every single one of us.
Yeah.
Not just Charles, not just Leslie, not just Kennedy, but to all of you that are watching and listening to us, family, to your friends, it requires action from every single one of us. And that means we've got to get rid of the apathy. And, you know, we struggle with that in our community, just being honest. We tend to be apathetic about the right things and concerned about the wrongs. We've got to be, we can't be apathetic and expect change to happen. It just doesn't happen because you want it to.
Well, I want you to think about this. 2022 is closer than you think.
Very close.
Very.
Very.
How about we're in April already? So
it's gonna be May. I think
right.
Next week.
Months out.
Yeah.
Right. And so why do I bring that up? Because the Democrats could have already lost the House before the 2022 election get here, because they have 5 special elections that are coming up. We got to be in tune to this stuff. The party that holds the White House usually gets wiped out in their first midterm election. That's what's coming. Okay, so worst case scenario, and what's keeping me up at night is that we lose the House and it's tied just like the Senate, and then you go on to midterm elections and they pick up 30 seats. We are in trouble.
And let me just be honest with you. Here's where, and you know, I call a spade a spade. Here's where our counterparts, Republicans, have done a much better job. They did not, in the last 8 years, lose the power. In the midterms, they kept it. And so, and they were able to enact change. So if we're going to be able to enact change, it requires action. So that means we got to get out and vote. But we don't stop there. We got to encourage others. But we can't encourage others by just saying go vote. We got to drill down deeper than that. We got to talk about the real issues, which means we've got to know about them ourselves. We got to have conversations. We have once we get beyond the pandemic, we'll have a virtual meeting and thing for everything else. Spend some time while you're talking with your friends. Talk about a little bit about life and what we need to empower and make sure we're talking about and discussing so that we can drive action in the right places. And I personally have committed in 2021 that in all my conversations, I'm going to find a way to talk about the issues. Some issue. I'm going to talk about some issue to encourage somebody to drive change in a pain point to them. It doesn't do any good to talk about a pain point to me. That's only going to make me move. I got to talk to them in a pain point to them to make them move. And we have to be cognizant of that. And that's what I'm imploring all of you to do. We've got to start having intentional and meaningful, progressive conversations.
I do agree.
IMP, intentional, meaningful, and progressive. Otherwise, as My wife's great aunt used to say about me, she said, "You talking all that noise, but you ain't saying nothing."
That's right. Hugely important. Hugely important.
So Kennedy, you said something that struck me. You said that you, after seeing what happened shortly after the verdict, it was a little discouraging. Uh, Talk to us about that, because where you are, you just kind of starting this race, and so we don't need you to be discouraged. We want you to be motivated. But talk to us about that pain, because I could almost hear it in your voice. It was like you were excited, and then it was like a total downer, in just even the way the words you use. So let's revisit that for a moment.
So it was just like, it was upsetting because I was watching the verdict and I was really happy. And then I do some work and I go, just look on social media, look at my phone. It's like another Black girl, Ma'Khia Brown, gets shot and killed by the police. And it was just like, she called the police officers for help. It wasn't like, it wasn't they pulled up on her doing something legal. She called them for help. So it's like, we can't even call the police for help. So what can we even do now? And I looked at the video and I looked at the video 3 times. I don't see how the shooting is justified. And I even looked at other videos where it was showing how one man, he was like, I saw it. The police, my neighbor saw it. It was so many witnesses. And it was just discouraging because she's only 16 years old. She'll never get a prom, go see a prom, go to graduation, go to college, nothing like that. And it was over her, defending herself. She called the police because she was defending herself. And a lot of people will say, well, she had a knife in her hand. It's a lot of white kids who had a gun in their hand and a knife in their hand, and it was not one. They didn't die. And I just, like, my question is,
listen, let me paint the picture on this. Let me pin that point right there. Let's give the contrast to that. Dylan Roof walks into an African American church. I believe it was in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes. Mother Emanuel.
Right? Emmanuel, First Emmanuel, I believe it was.
Mother Emanuel.
Mother Emanuel killed 9 people
in a church
after spending an hour in Bible study. When they arrested him, and you can find the video, it's out there. They didn't shoot him.
They took him to get something to eat.
They took him to get something to eat. You killed 9 people in a church that welcome you. And when they stop you, they don't even rough you up. They gingerly put you in a car and take you to get something to eat. That's where we are. That's just the ugly truth. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. So here's what both of you all are saying. What is the value of a Black life? And that's the whole premise of Black Lives Matter. It's not to say that only Black lives matter. It's to point to what is the value of a Black life.
And my thing is, this is my question that I really have. It's like, when you watch the video, he pulled up and in 4 seconds flat, literally, he just shot the girl. He was like, well, she had a knife. The knife, he wasn't even going towards him with the knife. And it's just like, even if you feel like she is going to stab the other girl, would you not shoot him in the leg or something? Like, you don't have to end their life. And it just shows time and time again, we don't matter.
That's an interesting thing, right? Because now thank you, Kennedy. So let's go back to all this training we've been doing. Let's go back to all this training we've been doing. So you mean to tell me she has a knife, you got a taser, you got a gun. Now, there's a whole lot to the body. You can shoot to disarm or to knock them down. Remember, you've had all this training.
Tase them.
You can use your taser. You've had all this training. You use any one of them, she's not dead. You didn't do that. You pulled a gun. Now, here's the thing. It's justified on that action But if it's on the other side, and I pull a knife and you got a gun, then I'm a threat. See, we we again, training is the answer. We've had all this training. We can't even process that. 15-year-old girl, she can't overpower you. She has a knife. You got to taser her.
Not going towards you. She wasn't going towards you. She called you for defense. I know it was in the 911 call. So it's just no excuse. And I feel like they're going to try to make an excuse out of it or dismiss his behavior. And they did say that the officer was on leave, but it's no excuse.
Well, that's a standard policy. Anytime you have an incident, they put him on leave. And if you did, he's on leave with pay right now.
But here's what I want. Here's what I want for you both. And
okay, because you know
our audience and our audience at large. This is what I want.
Okay.
We got to get out of the grievance phase. We know it's wrong. We can see that with our eyes. Richard Pryor said famously, "Who you gonna believe, me or your lying eyes?" We know it's wrong, right? Knowing that, are we going to be aggrieved or are we going to push for change? If training is not the answer, which I agree with you that training is not some magic blue pill from the Matrix that's gonna make everything right, then we got to be about the work, and we've got to push for wholesale reform. And this reminds me of the work that Thurgood Marshall and other civil rights icons did. This is the time that you need the federal government because local and state oversight is not enough. So we need to work within the system to get the system to work for us. Remember Brown v. Board of Education?
Yep.
So we've got to be smart about it. They want us to be in the grievance phase because then they can say we are angry Black people. Exactly. We are better than that. We're smarter than that. So we have to apply that same. What did you just call it? Kennedy, put it up on the screen. Intentional,
meaningful, and
progressive thought process, even to the grieving process. Because right now, our grieving is resulting in other people being killed. It's not in our hands, but the longer we grieve, the more time that's allowed for somebody else not to make it.
So here's what that looks like. That's a good point. So guess what? Let's talk about that intentional, right? I'm gonna give some places where we can start. We all have a local city police. We have a local city that we live in. They all have council meetings. They have to make public what's on that agenda. Be intentional about showing up.
Yes.
So you'll know what's going on. Everybody sitting at that table had to be voted in. When you pull the records and you look at how many people voted for city council, it's embarrassing when you look at the numbers of voter turnout. Turn out to vote. But now when you turn out to vote, you're not just voting at the person that had the most signs around your neighborhood. You voting on people and what they were actually doing that you saw them doing in the meetings because nobody else was attending. But you now can see and you encourage other people to attend. So now I can't fool you. You're seeing what I'm doing. You're seeing how I'm voting. You're seeing what I'm trying to do. So now you're voting. You have an intentional actions. You're going to meetings. Now you can have meaningful conversation with other people, and then you can take progressive action to get people out that's not moving the agenda forward. So you're just not holding up a spot. We don't have spots to hold up. We got spots we need to put people in that are ready and willing to do the work. So I'll take you up on that. I think that's the charge. You're right. We can't just sit up here and be in our feelings forever because nothing is going to ever change. So what are we going to do about it?
Right. And we have to stop voting for people. We have to vote for platform.
Say that again, Charles. Say that again. I don't think people heard you on that.
Stop voting for people and vote for platform. Meaning that before you ever cast that vote, you have an understanding with these people. Okay, police reform is what we expected. We don't get it. you're gone. There's too many people that's sitting in office for 10, 12 terms and not doing the work of the people.
So let me challenge you right here, Dr. Irving, because we talked about this in the class before. When we talk about Jackson City Council and stuff like that in Jackson politics, do you feel like people were voting for Mayor Lombardo for his platform?
Who?
And not,
Lumumba?
Yeah, and I think it was what was the City Council, Stokes?
Oh, Kenneth Stokes.
I always talk to him about this in class because it kind of baffled me how he acts. For those who don't know who he is.
So here's the thing. Take Stokes out of the equation for a second.
Okay.
Lumumba got a pass because people were not paying attention.
Okay.
There's no way that you should be not held accountable for the lack of water for a month in the city of Jackson.
Over.
I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
You have
to just say it.
For that. But he got a pass because the people that were running against him, they didn't have their platform together.
Very
They
true.
didn't have name recognition.
But Stokes
They obviously didn't invest the money. You cannot think that you're going to affect change with a dry pocketbook.
Very true.
But if you take that grievance and turn it into actual action items, then not only will the Mayor Lumumbas of the world change the way that they look at getting people water, which means they'll do a better job to keep their job, but then the people that are running against them can actually have something coherent to say.
That's true.
Now, Stokes is an outlier, but here's what I will tell you about Stokes. He is intimately involved in the lives of the people in his care. And so that's why people vote for him, because his platform is genuine love and affection for my people. I'm not here to sugarcoat my politics.
And he does not do that at all.
No. And it's not the best delivery, but guess what? He gets results.
And he gets attention.
And you know what? Here's what I say to you. I'm gonna pull Margaret McCullough because she said this and I believe it. She said, sit on the truth too long and it'll mash the life right out of you. So you gotta speak it.
Yeah.
You know, so man, look, we can talk about this forever, but I wanna turn us a little bit because we had some other very serious things that happened in the state this week, particularly as it relates to college athletes and the Senate bill that was just signed by the governor, sponsored by, I think, Senator Wicker, I think.
Yes, sir, you're right. Senator Wicker, yes.
So Kennedy, I know you've done some research on this, so let's bring the audience up to speed on what we're talking about, and then we're going to dive into this for a little bit, because I think it's very important, particularly to all sports fans and just people in general, people that even have kids that may be in this situation. We need to start being intentional, starting having meaningful conversations, being progressive about what's coming around the corner. So go ahead, Kennedy.
I'm going to talk about it first, and after this, I'm going to try to bring up a graph to show the audience. But basically, it was I think it was Deion Sanders, the athletic director, President Hudson, and Senator Wicker who met up talking about this bill because it just recently got passed. Mississippi is the 7th state to pass this bill behind California, Florida, Colorado, Michigan, Nebraska, and New Jersey. And so I had to ask my dad for some clarification this morning just to understand where the SWAC athletes are placed in nationwide sports. So we're basically an NC like 1A type of school. So we are a Division I school, but we're not as big as Ohio State and stuff.
So we're Division I AA.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Division 1A.
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all making a mess of this.
Clear it up then, counselor. Clear it up, counselor.
Jackson State University. NCAA member. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That means in every sport except football. Football has a Power 5 division, and they have a lower division. In the olden golden days, from which your dad graduated from with us, we would consider 1AA.
Yeah.
Now it's FBS, which is the football bowl subdivision, and then there's FCS, which is the football championship subdivision.
Yeah.
So basically, this bill is saying how players they can get paid for their likeness and their images. So not off of how much money they make, how much money the university makes off of them, but for their name. So like my dad brought up how back then, I think you guys know the Fab Five with Michigan.
Yes.
And Jalen Rose, if I'm not mistaken, was saying how, he was getting upset how people was making money off of him with his
jersey,
based on shirts and stuff like that, but he wasn't making any money. So
Right.
I think it's a huge move because Deion is a huge push for this bill because he was stating out in an interview, I got to figure out a way to take care of my boys. I don't want them to work off season and work during off season and stuff like that. And I agree, but really certain schools cannot financially do that. I want to say I think the SWAC, because granted we do make a lot of money, but I don't think we can pay our players for the
So
it's
here's
not the school. It's not the
so
school.
let's not convolute the facts, people.
Okay.
Let's not convolute the facts. Ed O'Bannon, remember that name, Ed O'Bannon.
Okay.
He played basketball at UCLA in the 90s. He, along with others who played, realized how much revenue they bring their schools.
Okay.
And in turn, how much money the NCAA makes off of national tournaments. And yet, the student athlete is the one who suffers in that. And so he filed a lawsuit. It's what litigation does. Supreme Court took a look at it and said, well, why couldn't he, or why couldn't others in his situation, if they have the name recognition, why couldn't they be paid for that? That's not the university paying them. That's outside. So let's say Leslie has big wide feet. Let's say he's a good football player.
Do not. That's your team you're talking about.
It's an insole company that wants to use his likeness to pay him for it.
Mm-hmm.
What these rules open up avenues for is for him to be paid for. What has to be worked out right now is whether or not the university can assist, and that's where Deion comes in at. Can he assist his players in inking revenue deals for the use of their likeness? Because of NCAA existing rules, there has to be some modification to the rules for all institutions.
Yeah.
How you help these student athletes and how far you can go in that assistance to make sure that they are signing deals that are compliant with the existing rules.
Well, that's true, which means there's probably going to have to be some rule changes, because then you got to ask the question, wait a minute, can these guys now get agents? Are they supposed to rotate them themselves? Or,
that's a part of what is under discussion right now nationwide, because what happened once the Supreme Court started looking at it, then Congress started looking at it. So that's why you have these individual states breaking away, because they're trying to get ahead of the curve.
Mm. So now we talking about this. I want to share my screen so I can show y'all just a graph that I found online showing this was in 2014. Hold on. Let me see if it'll pull up. This was how much money, when we're talking about whether it's, players are getting paid for the likeness or not. Do you guys see that graph?
Yeah. Blow it up a little bit.
Well, I don't know how to do that one.
Just maximize your screen right there.
Okay. So basically, this red line shows you how much money is allocated. This was around 2014. And this was just only the 10 largest revenues. It says athletic department revenue versus scholarships expenses. In this schools, this is based off of Texas, Michigan, University of Texas, Michigan, Florida, Wisconsin, Louisiana State, Texas A&M, and I think it was a few other schools as well. But this is the money that they will only have for scholarships, which is around $12 million. But the money that athletes make for the school is well over $100 million. So it just goes to show, and I really agree that, whether players get paid for their likeliness or not, it just doesn't make sense to me how I just don't understand how they don't have they're not getting paid right now. But
So the counter argument that has always been used for that, Kennedy, is this: we are paying you through your scholarship.
But a lot of them players don't even get scholarships. A lot of them players that are doing well some of them are walk-on.
Not that many, especially not at Power 5.
That is true.
And it also depends on the scholarship structure in the sports. Not all sports are structured the same. And there are more scholarships depending on which division you fall in. And so that's a question for Jackson State and other HBCUs that are going to have to answer how you equitably do this. But the larger question has always been this: okay, we understand that we get scholarships, which add out at close to, depending on what school is, it could be $50,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine, but that doesn't address your needs outside of going to class and eating in the cafeteria, which is not always open. So how do you address that? And that's where this likeness issue comes in, because if they're allowed to do that, then they can generate a revenue stream that allows them to continue to be student athletes without giving up their eligibility. Because right now, without these rules, if you receive money for something, then you're breaking the rules and you're ineligible.
Just like how it happened at Arizona. So I do agree.
Yeah. And I think go ahead, Kennedy. Sorry.
I was just saying, do you think it will happen in the SWAC? Because as you can tell, SWAC schools, yes, we are Division 1, but we don't make as much money as those big power schools. So that's my question. And then another question I just have is, why was it so easy for, Governor Tate Reeves to sign off this bill, but with so many other bills that should be addressed, like public health and infrastructure within, especially the city of Jackson? And so that's what is kind of, my mind is kind of going haywire. It's just,
Kennedy, let me hip you to something. SEC football is a multi-billion-dollar business. They want their players to get paid. We are beneficiaries of being in an SEC state.
Okay.
Right. I think this goes back even to long ago. Even if you were on an academic scholarship, when I was in school, you could get paid a stipend. Okay. Athletes could not and cannot. It's a violation. So how, it's so many problems with the existing system from the get-go. You're not even fair to the academic scholar. So I can't even get a stipend. I can't get anything. And even to the point that if I buy you a hot dog, that's in violation. So I applaud the change. I just think they've got to work out, how do we manage this?
Well, they have to work out how they manage the second step, Leslie. What you should know is there are schools that are already allowed under the rules to pay their players a stipend. That has changed over the last 6 to 7 years. They get, depending on the school, they can get up to $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a semester.
Yeah, I do agree, because I know I used to play basketball, and some of my friends who play at Baylor, she still gets she got a stipend. So
yeah, that's good to know. I wasn't even caught up on that. I know it wasn't the case many years ago. So that's good.
No, you're talking about like 15 years ago, but that has changed. This speaks directly to how you inject sponsorship dollars into the student's pocket and how you accomplish that.
Well, let me ask you another question, a twist on this. Now, this is just your opinion. Do you think that if the NCAA determines that coaches can aid, do you think Power 5 coaches are going to actually aid players in getting revenue across the board equally, or do you think it's going to be adverse in one way or
But
another?
here's
That's
the
the
thing
real
about this.
question.
The thing that you need to understand about this is not equal opportunity.
I know it's
This
not.
is
I know it's not. I
this
do
is
understand that.
this
I do
is
understand that.
this is who are your star players, and how do we use them for us to make revenue and us pay them, and it all
Right.
be legal.
That is true.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. This is not a trophy. Everybody gets a trophy. It's
No.
not.
Not
So
everybody's.
my question is, do you think the Power 5 coaches are going to aid their stars in getting paid?
Well, I will answer that with a factual basis. Power 5 schools booked on paying stipends. You know what happened? Mid-majors started paying stipends. Guess where the players started going?
Mid-major.
Right. Guess who pays stipends now?
Power
Power 5.
5. Okay.
That's why the marketing mind of Deion Sanders is pivotal in this moment.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that gives Jackson State, if they move this way and they work this out as it looks like it's going, do you think that gives Jackson State and Deion an advantage because he lives in this world right now and has done it?
Well, I would say the answer to that is yes, because they're waiting on clarity from the NCAA. He's done as much as he can do legally. He's already got the deals lined up.
The bill will be effective July 1st, so that is
the deal's been lined up since he set foot on campus.
Got it. So, man, Willie Mae, I didn't even know. Willie Mae said she didn't get paid anything at the University of Memphis.
What sport? What sport did Willie Mae play?
I didn't even know Willie Mae played a sport. What sport, Willie Mae? So, but that's good to know. I'm happy to hear that the stipends are being paid because I wasn't aware of that. Charles, I know as we come to the final minutes, we're wrapping up here. It's been a good show today. I want to remind everybody again, renew your annual reports for your business, for those of you that have companies, LLCs, S-Corps, corporations within the state of Mississippi, and any state for that matter. It's time to do your annual reports. If we have facilitated your corporation for us, please call the office so we can do your update as well. We'll be happy to do that on your behalf. 601-340-6800. Also, if you want to get alerts to information that we're going to be pushing out to help you have intentional and meaningful conversation and then take progressive actions, please join our mailing list. I'll be working with Kennedy and the student intern to provide you with great content, things you can do, help facilitate some of the discussions, sending you information that helps you start working toward change. Please join our mailing list. Kennedy has dropped that in the comment section as well. And we'll be getting information out to you. We'll be a lot of great stuff is coming your way as we all work together to make change happen. So please just sign up on the list and we'll be communicating with you. A lot of good stuff is headed your way.
I think the one good thing that I took away from this whole conversation was this, what you said, Mr. Peters, was intentional, meaningful, and progressive. And regardless whether it's from the criminal justice or even social reform, it's always, we have to have these type of discussions. So that's, hopefully there will be reform. So
the reform is in us.
We
have to take the action to reform. And I think that's what Charles was trying to say all along.
Mm-hmm.
Is
indeed
reform. We are the reform. You know, Michael Jackson had a song called "Man in the Mirror."
Yeah,
it's still relevant.
Oh, no doubt. Stop looking for somebody else to do it.
So I'll take that mantle, Charles.
Because
take us out.
There's a new I think it's a Pew poll or maybe another research organization. They just did a nationwide poll on your view of the United States. 75% of Democrats have optimism and believe that the United States is a great place with its flaws. 66% of Republicans feel like the world is an evil place in America because of terrorists, criminals, and faulty politics. So if you want reform, you got to start small and build big. Meaning, don't start with small ideas, but start with the people you know, your circle of influence, and build out, and then connect the dots. Just like we're talking about police reform, I'm telling you, police reform is now hung up in the Senate because of politics, because it's going to be used as a part of the culture war to win in 2022.
Very true. Great way to wrap it up.
Great way to wrap it up. There you have it, folks. Another Friday, another very packed episode. Remember, IMP, intentional, meaningful, progressive. I'm counting on you, just like I'm counting on myself. We are the change. So now let's go change things. See you next week.
See you.